okay, I've always had this funny conversation with some of my closest friends lah. Because I think this kind of conversation you can only have with your closest friends, because if you don't, you just sound like a bigot, right? So I always had this conversation where when we talk about race, right? I always tell my friends, are we racist if you talk about race? Or are we racist if we don't talk about race? Because some people say that, hey, you cannot say that, you cannot say, hey, Chinese are Indian or Malay, you cannot say that, right? Is being so afraid of mentioning race, is that being racist? Or is talking about race openly, is that considered racist, right? So for me, I find it very weird, because if I say, Baga, you Chinaman, to my friend, right? People might say, hey, very stereotypical racist statement. I say, but no, it's just, I'm Indian, he's Chinese. If you're making fun of a friend, if he's a total stranger and I'm demeaning him, I should go to hell, right? But if it's between friends and we are just having fun, shouldn't that be allowed So that's where I kind of man, so what is really, when it comes, especially race, what is racist, right? In the sense that...
we had a discussion in the office about this, I think about 3 years ago, where I asked the entire office, at that time it was about, I think, 10 or 12 people, what are the differences between racism and generalization? All Indian people are darker than Chinese people. Racist? I mean, come on, right? Right? Women in general are not as physically strong as men genetically. I mean, that's not a sexist statement. That is a generalized statement. So we kind of gravitated towards what racism is when you don't allow for exceptions to generalization.
Oh, he's Indian, so he must be that, but he cannot be.
Correct. No exceptions, right? He has to be, otherwise he's not Indian, If you say Chinese people in general are money-minded, I would wholeheartedly agree with you, right? But if you say all Chinese are money-minded, then I wouldn't, because you're not allowing for exceptions. So I feel that is the point at which we become racist. Not to not talk about race at all. I mean, for God's sake, come on. To me, what's special about Malaysia is that we have these races that coexist mostly in harmony, probably more in harmony like 30 years ago than today, but still mostly in harmony. And all cultures are kind of preserved. If you go to Indonesia, the Chinese have become intrinsically just Indonesians, and there are pros and cons to that. But I kind of like our deal. The pros and cons as well.
I mean, I do believe the Malaysian experience is a truly unique experience, and
the food. Oh my god, the food.
Don't get me started, bro. This MC, I've just been putting on weight.
I can't see. I mean, maybe you can tilt your camera a little bit down.
It's at an angle for a reason.
Oh, okay.
My wife has kind of brought it to me that, this angle, your double chin not so obvious lah. So try not to show your stomach, So
and then you get some fuzz to cover it, right?
Yeah, why not?
Right? That's is it racist to say that Indians are hairier than Chinese? Of course it's not. I mean, come on,
No, I'll give you the racist version of that, right? The racist version of that is, I've personally heard observations like, Indian people smell bad, right? I think, and then they say that, so all Indian people smell bad. So it's just, it's a truth that they have in their head, and there is no discussing it. For them, it's just, Indian people smell bad.
In that case, my girlfriend thinks I'm half Indian now. So.
It is, for me, it was scary because years ago when I was single, I have to say that because my wife might listen to this, right? Years ago when I was single, and when I was on some of these dating apps, right? Some girls would just reply. They can see your photo, right? It's so bloody obvious that you're Indian. Okay, maybe they're wondering whether Indian or African in my case, right? And then they are very okay to, I don't go out with Indians, right? Which is fair, I accept, whatever, your choice, right? And then they can go out and say, Indian people smell funny. And I find the fact that you can go and tell that to another human being, it could be...
Why would they want to add that? They just say no, bro, you're not my type. Then good enough, You don't say no, you're Indian and you're smelly and that's why I don't date you. I mean, that's a bit vindictive, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think some Indian guy has broke this girl's heart before, she just going on a crusade. I don't know. So I think that was fascinating to me that there's also the scenario where people don't mind going out of their way to kind of insult you, lah, right? Where it's in a scenario where it's totally unnecessary, right? So in that sense, I would say, okay, that sounds racist. And that is not a generalization. That's just you having your bigoted experience, lah.
Yeah, which is where most racism comes from anyway.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about dating sites, but even when it comes to like the working world, right? You still see companies posting stuff like preferred Chinese
only. Yeah.
I mean, I've not seen a preferred Malay only ad so far. The one that
that's a very sensitive topic then.
But I've not seen that ad, lah. I'm not saying there's no preference, right? But I'm saying I've not seen that ad, and I've not seen the ad for Indians. But I do when I've spoken to Indian businessmen and all that. Some of them do have a preference to hire Indian, lah. And they say, oh, if we don't help Indians, who's going to help Indians? Blah blah blah. And there's a justification for all of that. Which I don't necessarily subscribe to, but it is what it is, lah.
I can give you a very good example. Like, I noticed this a few years ago. For whatever reason, right, cinema seemed to be almost 100% Indian people behind the counter. I don't know why. Well, I mean, I guess TGV is another Krishnan, lah, but like GSC also, it's like primarily, I wouldn't say 100%, but like 80% or 85%, much higher than the usual, balance.
You're right. And I'm trying to think a little bit. I have a story in mind, but I'm trying to trace the source of where I heard this story, right? So basically, I think it is more of a case of people trying to help people, lah, right? So So there's some industries like you mentioned, like cinema and all that, where it's kind of dominated by Indians, so they tend to hire Indians, right? And I don't think it's discrimination so much as preference, which I don't think preference is still discrimination, right? Is preference discrimination?
I wanted to talk about that. I don't think everything is black and white, man. I think that people like take this action and put it into this category, or take this action and put it into this category, take this feeling and put it into that category. It's like the pointlessness of categorizing like dance music, like what do you care? As long as it feels right, then just do it, Like this is not trance, this is not house, this is not progressive trip hop trance or whatever. And just like, is this racism, or is this discrimination? Just like, is it wrong? I guess that would be a better question to ask. And again, everybody has their own definitions of what's right and wrong, so that makes it a little bit difficult, So I wouldn't go. I feel like the classifications actually separate us. Oh, that's racist. Oh, this is racism, so he's a racist. And then it's like everything gets lumped into this giant like friggin' bowl that you might not deserve.
Yeah, I can't share any names, but one of my friends, one of my old friends, before he got married, he was Indian. He was dating an Indian girl at that point, lah. And I was, just so happened that at that point I was dating a Malay girl, right? So I was having
Petronas ad right there, man.
Yeah, so I was having a conversation with him about hearing some pushback, lah, that I'm dating a non-Indian, lah, and all that. And then I thought he was on the same wavelength as me, like we knew each other for so long, right? And then he kind of gave me Ija, sometimes it's easier, if you're same culture, same religion, it's not so much about racism and all that. It's more about familiarity. It's easier for your family to get along with her family, So he kind of lays out this very amicable explanation to racism, lah. What I felt was, you're saying people should marry within their own race, religion, because it's easier or not. I felt like, dude, it still sounds like discrimination to me, lah. But he was kind of like saying it's better, it's easier and all that. And you fast forward years on, irony is our friend married a non-Indian, lah. So he ended up marrying a non-Indian. And when I brought it up to him that, dude, remember the conversation we had? He swears that we never had that conversation, right? He swears like, no, I would have never said that. I would have never said that. I swear. And I'm like, Dude, I remember this conversation very clearly, right? So you see, I mean, he changed. Of course, like, he fell in love and whatnot. And his whole reality switch, the fact that this was his system where he believes that, it's easier if you all get along with our same race and religion. And just because he found the woman of his dreams and whatnot, the whole reality of his disappeared or changed. And then he's like, I would never say something to you. That's bullshit lah. He said,
but I mean, he's not wrong, right?
In the sense that I think what you mentioned earlier, right? In the sense that you must allow exceptions, right? The fact that those kind of statements, especially when you apply it to our parents' generation, right, removes the exception lah. Because the exception is always somebody else. It's always like, you should date somebody in your same race or same religion and blah blah blah. And no, how about that person who married this person, or that person who married somebody else, and they are different lah. There's different scenarios lah, but it never applies to you, right? So my worry is when this kind of scenarios come into play, I think, how do I explain this to you? Okay, let me try a better way, right? I think it's very hard for us to point out a person that we know who we can single out as, this guy is a racist motherfucker, he's Hitler, right? I don't think I personally know anybody like that lah. There might be people, there might be sleeper Hitlers that I know, but
they're all in parliament.
So I don't think I know anybody who is racist and evil, right? But even people who I consider who are good, smart, kind people can have this kind of preference of, I don't think Indians should marry non-Indians, or I don't think Malays should do this, I don't think Chinese should do that. And these things kind of, I think, it permeates this whole separation lah. There's this whole, I don't think people are doing it out of hate. It's just preference lah, but I think it kind of filters down to a way where it doesn't help the cause of unity and whatnot lah.
Okay. I think that we need to stop thinking in terms of extremes, of a 1 and a 0. Like, you're racist or you're not. I think, to be honest, there's a little bit of generalization in all of us.
Yeah.
We use generalization on a daily basis.
I agree. Yeah.
Walking around in Bangsa is safer than walking in Petaling Street. That's not because we saw a crime, but because of what we heard.
Yeah.
Like from other people. So we're making generalizations all the time. So in general, if you looked at a guy walking in Petaling Street and you clutched your handbag a little closer versus the same thing happening in Bangsa and you not clutching your handbag closer, then you're kind of showing that you have predispositions to making life decisions, right? So and if you call a person that does that a racist, that is going to make that person not want to engage with you in any meaningful way. So I prefer to think of life in terms of black and white and grays, right? And the gray in the middle, what we try and do, what I feel that I try and do every day is I try to move the needle of gray, the definition of gray, in one particular direction or the other. Not to move it, swing it to white or swing it to black. Nothing can be completely white, nothing can be completely black. Everything is gray, but it's just what's the definition of gray.